Hi, this is Lisa Rangel with Chameleon Resumes, the premier executive resume writing company, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I want you to be gentle with yourself, and I'm going to talk to you about 3 scenarios where you need to be gentle with yourself. 3 career scenarios where you need to be gentle with yourself. And frankly, there's more than 3, but for the sake of this video and keeping it a little short, we're going to talk about 3. But there's so many scenarios now in today's world where you really need to take a moment and be gentle with yourself. And it's really a time to, by be gentle with yourself, I mean reset. Allow yourself some grace, allow yourself to take a step back where you don't have to always be so hard charging, and take a minute to just rest and reflect. So on that note, the first scenario that you need to be very gentle with yourself with is when you feel burnout, when you feel tired. And this is such a common problem. I mean, I have talked to so many people over the last year, over the last few weeks even. It seems to be mounting, getting to be more and more people that I talk to that they're just burnt out. And where they're not being gentle with themselves is they're not allowing themselves to take a break. Now, I'm not implying that you quit your job. I'm not implying that there isn't some privilege with being able to take a break, but I'm talking about even being creative on how you take that break. I know many of us can't stop working. I know I can't stop working. So, I know many of us can't, take a break from parent care or child care, or sometimes you can't take a break from certain conditions you have in your life because they're chronic and they're permanent and they're not going away, right? So how do you do that, right? I had a friend of mine years ago tell me that when I felt overwhelmed, to look at my schedule in that particular day and what absolutely does not have to happen that day, like absolutely doesn't have to happen, and reschedule it all. And so that's the suggestion I give you. Now, I know that for some days that's not going to happen. I know that for some of you that privilege doesn't exist in any particular day. But, if you wake up in a particular morning, or if you're planning your week ahead and you're feeling burnout, like look at your week and see where you can lighten your week, even if you can't fully take a day off. That's my suggestion to you. And I find that it's a suggestion that I've had in my life now for over a decade, and I use it often. And I can tell you that, back when I was like starting my business and, revenues weren't high when I first started, and the child care and the parent care responsibilities were, beyond up to my eyeballs, and I didn't know where to breathe. There were days that I was able to look at my day, and even if I was able to eliminate 2 out of the 10 things I had to do that day, it was at least 2 things I didn't have to do that day. So my suggestion to you is to look at how it's possible instead of looking how it's not possible, because there's always ways for it to not be possible. But really look at how it's possible, and you'll start to see where you can trim your day a little bit here and there. The second career scenario where I want you to be gentle with yourself is when you are in what is looking like a short-term job. You essentially took a job a few months ago with, all the passion, all the excitement, all the potential building into you starting the job. And now you're a few months into the job. You might even be 10 months, a year into the job. You might know within 2 months into that job that this is not the long-term job, right? So when you have what's coming up to be a short-term job, and I hear the layers of what are people going to think? How am I going to interview? Are they going to judge me that I'm leaving so soon? And basically the litany of self beating that we do to ourselves because we took a job that isn't working out. And I've had 2 jobs in my life that were less than 9 months that didn't work out. So I know how that feels. I'm telling you to be gentle with yourself. One, if there is a positive, and I say this very, tongue in cheek, because there's nothing positive about the pandemic. But if there is a positive that comes out of this pandemic, is recruiters and companies are a lot more forgiving and open to reasons why you might not be in a job long term. They don't even necessarily ask the reasons for leaving as in a scrutinizing manner as they once did, because there's just a lot of grace. And frankly, there's always a way if you are asked about why you're leaving, because asking why you're leaving isn't necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes that reason can help you make sure that this next place is the right fit, right? So the key is to be able to handle the question if it's asked, but handle it in a way that, what did you learn from your experience so you aren't repeating it? In terms of decisions you made, maybe pieces of the company's culture that you didn't see initially or didn't ask about. And again, it's not to say that it's your fault, but just I'm a big believer in there's always like kind of two sides to the story, and somewhere in the middle is where actually everything happened. And so you're going to, even if the lesson is I have to learn to set boundaries, right? Maybe I didn't set boundaries. And so I need to learn how to set boundaries. And that's what you can tell your new employer, right? And this way, if they don't if they don't appreciate that, then this next place might not appreciate boundaries either. And you might be repeating the same thing. So the key is to just be gentle with yourself. It happens to people. We make the wrong decision when we choose employers sometimes, despite our best intentions. So you're not the only person that it's happened to. And so be gentle, know that you will be okay, know that you will find another job, and you can learn from how to do it so this next one is better. And then the third scenario, where I really want you to give yourself some grace and be gentle with yourself, is when you've been laid off. It happens. It absolutely happens. It happens to almost everybody. And frankly, there are more people being laid off than people who have never experienced a layoff. And so you're in a larger group. I'm one of them. You're in a larger group if you've been laid off, and you are amongst people who have been through it. So the key is to talk about it with people you trust, and don't keep it so bottled up inside, thinking that it's only you and there's something wrong with you, and and don't isolate with it. You are part of a larger group that has been laid off at some point in their career, and frankly, the people who have never been laid off, they're not better than us, and they've just frankly, were in the right place at the right time for majority of their career. And don't get me wrong, some of them wish they were laid off. So, just because they weren't doesn't mean they've always had it better either. So don't do that grass is greener thing. Don't necessarily think it's very hard not to take a layoff personally, but as objectively as you can, my suggestion to you is to realize this is a business decision, and it's not always about, anything you did wrong. And so and with what's gone on the last couple of years, like, it really has nothing to do with one particular employee, that being you, that being me, when it happened to me. Like, it's really usually part of a larger picture, of which we're just a small piece, a small color, a small speck in that picture. So, just know, again, you're not alone, and there are places and people where you can get help. So the key is that there's so much going on, again, this list can go on and on. You can feel that, even if you are working, maybe you haven't had a great achievement record where you are. So how should you interview, or what's wrong with you? Or are people going to see that when you interview? Again, that's, maybe I'll give a little bonus one here. That's another place to give you some grace, because I'm telling you, even people with like progressively linear backgrounds are going into interviews going, how am I going to tell them I had a layoff? How am I going to tell them I didn't meet the goals I was supposed to meet? So everybody's got something, so if you can get anything out of this video, is realize everybody's got baggage. Everybody's got career baggage, and some just present it more genuinely or diplomatically than others, but that doesn't mean you can't also learn how to do that. So if this resonated with you and you'd like some help, I have some DIY help through the link below, for not just interviewing, but for the entire job search. So this way you can handle all the things well throughout the process and not just the interview piece. And then if you'd like some help from our team directly, you can also just DM me and inquire how that happens, and we can set up a chat. So I hope this helps you. I hope you are gentle with yourself. And if you know of somebody who can benefit from this video, I'm going to ask you to share it. If you have a comment or a question, feel free to post it below or send me an email at lr@chameleonresumes.com or DM me. I read and reply to every comment and every email. I do my best. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I'm going to ask you to subscribe or follow me, so this way you do not miss next week's video. So thank you so much for joining me today. Again, be gentle and be kind to yourself, and have a great day.